secrets. Stay tuned as we dissect these critical aspects. Before that, let's listen in to what Biren Singh has to say, and then we will go to our guest. There are 4 special guests who will dissect and discuss the importance of the arrest which has been made, the importance of new information which is being made, and is there a foreign angle to the trouble which is brewing in the state of Manipur. Let's listen into N. Biren Singh and then we will continue with the discussion.
ये जो मणिपुर में हो रहा है ये घटना, ये वेजिंग वॉर अगेंस्ट द इंडियन यूनियन बाय द Kuki militant from Myanmar base and Bangladesh base along with some militant from India. तो it clearly shows, इसने सबको दिखा दिया है कि ये कोई मामूली चीज नहीं है. तो इसलिए हम NIA को और भारत सरकार को बहुत बहुत हम धन्यवाद करता हूँ. खास करके मणिपुर के पब्लिक लोग और भारत का पब्लिक लोग ने जो ये सच्चाई को लाने के लिए 3-4 महीना लगा के कई तरह तरह का मीडिया कवरेज दे के, रिपोर्ट दे के सबको ये समझने का लाइन में आया है. इसीलिए हम सबको बधाई करता हूँ, सबको थैंक्स. और खास करके ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी जी और ऑनरेबल यूनियन अमित शाह जी खास करके ये स्टेटस में लाने के लिए हम बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया. NIA की तरफ से एक केस के लिए जो कोकटा में बॉम्ब ब्लास्ट हुआ था उसी में इसे एक पकड़ लिया, उसको हम दिल्ली ले गया. और आज एक ब्रेक थ्रू हुआ है जो जहाँ में जो एक दो स्टूडेंट, एक लड़की और एक लड़का को जो हाइनेस क्राइम उसको मर्डर किया था पकड़ने के बाद में, उसको हम लोग ने अभी तक नहीं पकड़ सका था. लेकिन कल परसों से ऑनरेबल यूनियन होम मिनिस्टर अमित शाह जी ने वो एक CBI का स्पेशल डायरेक्टर को अलोंग विद 5 से सीनियर ऑफिसर यहाँ भेज के कैम्प करके रखा है. और कैम्प करने के बाद में विद द सपोर्ट ऑफ द इंडियन आर्मी और पैरामिलिट्री फोर्सेस, असम राइफल्स और स्टेट पुलिस कंबाइंड टीम करके आज 4 एक्यूज पकड़ लिया है. और ये बहुत बड़ा अचीवमेंट है. तो ये हैंगलेप एरिया सुल्तानपुर से पकड़ लिया है. इसीलिए हम NIA, CBI और सारे सेंट्रल पैरामिलिट्री फोर्सेस इंक्लूडिंग इंडियन आर्मी एंड असम राइफल.
This is an extremely important development as far as the ethnic clashes which has been going on in the state of Manipur. I'm joined by Rami Niranjan Desai, author and scholar, Northeast region. I'll also be joined by Professor Prasenjit Biswas, Professor of Philosophy, Northeastern Hill University, Suhas Shakma, Director, Rights and Risk, and Major General Ashwani Sivach. But before I go to Rami and start the conversation, I would like to read out the details which has come. That a week after arresting a trained operative of separatist group PLA on Saturday, the NIA has made the second arrest and found that apart from Myanmar-based militant group, a Bangladeshi based militant group has also entered into a conspiracy with a section of militant leaders in India to indulge in incidents of violence with an intention to drive a wedge between different ethnic community and to wage war against the country. What we have been told is that the NIA has arrested Simon Lim Gangte in a case related to transnational conspiracy by Myanmar and Bangladesh terror outfit. The case was registered suo motu by the NIA on July 19, and Gangte has been brought to Delhi after his arrest and will be produced before the concerned courts. We'll be playing the visuals of Gangte being produced in the court in some time. And the police is saying that Gangte was working as a teacher at VN School Model Kwata since 2018. And according to NIA spokesperson, after his arrest, it has come to the fore that Myanmar and Bangladesh-based militant groups in a conspiracy with a section of militant leaders in India are trying to indulge in incidents of violence with an intention to drive a wedge between different ethnic groups and to wage war against the Indian state. Rami, can you hear me?
Brijesh, I can hear you. I hope my voice is clear because yours.
Yes, your voice is reaching us loud and clear. Welcome to News9 Live. Rami, with the latest arrest of NIA, the entire gamu of what was happening in the state of Manipur, the ethnic conflict and all, and the consistent denial about the foreign hand into the trouble which is going on in the state. Do you think with this arrest and the kind of details which are emerging, it changes the entire contours of what is going on in the state of Manipur?
But first of all, good afternoon, Brijesh. I think this had to happen. It was only a matter of time. I feel that any observer of this region would have known this from the very beginning, that there was an inevitable role of groups and insurgent groups and vested interests in this conflict. And if they didn't, then either they had no clue about this region or then, and the geopolitics of this region, or then they themselves had vested interests. We've been saying this from day one, that historically this region has had international interference, international interest. We have known the history of NSCM, we have known the history of NLFT. NLFT got its training in Bangladesh. It was trained by the ISI. We know NSCM used the roots in Myanmar to get their training in China. We know about the weapons that are so easily available across the borders. I have to say our agencies once again have done a brilliant job. I had no doubt, not just with the swift arrest of the people involved in the murders of those two young children, but also now cracking open these international links, because they're not very easy. These are countries that are unstable, that have political, economic instability, and it's not very easy to conduct investigations like this, because there's also transnational ethnic relationships. But having said that, you cannot look at these conflicts, Brijesh, any longer in a localized manner. Those days are gone. And this is especially true for areas like Manipur that lie on the border and are so important to India and have unstable, countries across, as well as porous borders. But let me say this, unfortunately for the Northeast, they're surrounded by countries like this. You look at Myanmar, you look at Bangladesh, and all these countries have a history of ethnic conflicts, which not only have an impact on India's national security, but they also have an impact on India's infrastructure projects in these countries. Also, Brijesh, let me take this one step further. I've just written an article about this, exactly the same topic in Open Magazine this week. And I spoke about, the kind of international interests that are in these regions. You see, Myanmar, there's a reason that it's called the sacrifice zone. It's called the sacrifice zone because, of the kind of international investments in these areas and what they are willing to forsake for it. You see, after the regime change in Naypyidaw, the military crackdown has caused a lot of displacement. Of course, the Saigang region across Manipur the coup has had an impact about 70,000 homes, or over 1.5 million people that have directly come into India. And that makes it a very precarious position for us because, just across Army, you have the Arakan Army, you even further upwards have the Kachin Independence Army, and all of these organizations have a transnational ethnic relationship with certain fringe elements of communities in the Northeast. And over and above that, Western powers are, because they don't, because they have vested interests, because of the critical earth materials that are becoming so and so much more important to the geopolitics of the world, there are more and more sanctions being made on one hand, causing economic and political instability. On the other hand, there is some sort of relationship building with local armed groups. All of this eventually has an impact on India. I think what we need to really start doing now, Brijesh, is we need to start looking at this in a geopolitical, geostrategic point of view and not just in a localized point of view.
Okay. Well, that's very well put, Rami. I'm also joined by Suhas Chakma, who's the Director, Rights and Risk, and Major General Ashwini Sivach, Defense and Geopolitics expert. I'll first come to you, General Sivach, and then I'll go to Suhas. General Sivach, this new arrests which have been made by National Investigation Agency, and the kind of details which are emerging, don't you think that it changes the way we were looking at this ethnic clashes, and how, now more and more proofs are emerging of how, this entire conflict is being fanned by people or militant groups sitting in Myanmar or Bangladesh? General Sivash?
Very correct. Brijesh, there is no doubt. Involvement of foreign hand was suspected from the beginning. This may be not the initiator, but then one knew it, that the Bangladesh and especially from Myanmar, it is always the terrorist group or the militant group coming and operating in India. As the things unfolded, it was known that from Myanmar, there are a section of population, especially the Chin population, after the military junta has taken over in Myanmar, there is a lot of displacement which has taken place, and majority of them have shifted toward India, and they have come to the hilly area where cookies were there, and they were settled down there, and they were involved in basically poppy cultivation and drug nexus. So this was very much known, but saying that direct involvement of China and ISI Pakistan, this has added more color. So there was a doubt, because China has been always involved in creating a militancy in Northeast, especially in 60s, 70s and early part of 90s. Of late, it was not that much, but some reports are saying that China is still interested to create a sort of disturbance in Northeast. And also Mizoram bordering Chittagong Hill. Now, as far as Bangladesh is concerned, Bangladesh government of Sheikh Hasina has been very proactive and have been always supporting of India. Remember what has happened a long time back in early part of 2000, when ULFA and NDFB, National Democratic Front, which they were operating initially from Bhutan. And in fact, I was commanding a battalion that time. We have gone and busted their camps in the border area of Assam, neighboring Bhutan. Their bases then shifted to Chittagong Hill. But this is also known that the Sheikh Hasina, when she came in power, she was very proactive and she busted all of them, and she gave us assurance that Chittagong Hills will not be utilized by the ULFA and National Democratic Front for anti-India activity. But this place is, one can say, autonomous region, and there is a chance of militant group operating, and these militant groups then coming and creating problem in India is a well-known phenomenon. What has happened is NIA has brought it out. This is a very well orchestrated thing has happened. Don't take it, this is an ethnic clash between two communities, Metis and Kuki. There is something more to that, and we had a doubt. Because the doubt was that, of course, 4,000 to 5,000 weapons have been looted from police armory within Manipur. But we were also knowing that there are about 5,000 to 6,000 weapons which has come from across the border from Manipur. And since the porous border is there, because there is a treaty signed of 16 kilometers, you can move on the either side. That had made it much easier. So therefore, three things stand out. Macro-terrorism involvement, drug trafficking, also poppy cultivation being done in certain hill areas. Second thing, the weapons coming from Myanmar, and the militant group directly involved on the behest of China and possibly from ISI, operating both from Myanmar as well as Mizoram. This Mizoram thing which has come is a new dimension which possibly we have not thought earlier.
Okay. I'm also being joined by Professor Prasenjit Biswas, Professor of Philosophy, Northeastern University. Welcome, sir. Welcome to News9 Live. I'll first go to Mr. Chakma. Mr. Chakma, what do you have to say on this latest development which has come out, and the things which is emerging out post the arrest of Simanelam Gangte?
Well, I would say that the conflict in Manipur did not start, as General Sivas had mentioned, with the involvement of any foreign insurgent group or foreign government.
Okay.
It started on its own between two communities, and we have to realize one particular thing, that in the Northeast, the tribalism or racial feelings, whatever you may term it, is very strong. When communities live in different countries where they perceive or maybe true that they are under different kind of repressions, then they form insurgent organizations, and this transnational cooperation between insurgent group of a particular community is very natural. Anybody who is involved or following the issues very closely, let me tell you that our own intelligence agencies, either to get information or to address certain strategic interests, they themselves are also involved. It is not something which is unknown to the intelligence establishment. It's part of the game if you are there. The only issue which I would mention is that I think how much the groups in Bangladesh are involved. I would say that in Bangladesh, those whom in India we call cookies, they are known as the bombs, and their population in the entire Chittagong text is only 15,000. Of late, about a year and a half back, one particular group has become very powerful in Bangladesh. It's called the Kuki China, and that is a creation of the Bangladesh, says the GFI, basically to address its own strategic interests, both in the Bandarban district as well as in the Rakhine province of Myanmar, because there is a conflict between the Arakhanis, meaning the Rohingya refugees, the Rohingyas, and the government of Myanmar. I think in the whole process, what we have to remember is that if we are to have a strategic interest, forget the approach towards this, we have to remember one thing. Myanmar is the source of, regional conflict. And we are, as I said earlier, importing the conflict, first of all, by funding Myanmar with giving so much of arms and ammunition, then Myanmar resorting to various atrocities where about 60,000 Chin population have come to Myanmar, Mizoram alone. So the populations from there facing repression are coming back. So we are funding the Myanmar government to bring the problem in the northeast. And never forget, there are allegations that the Meitei groups, the insurgent groups in Myanmar are fighting alongside the junta, and whereas the Chin groups are fighting alongside the pro-democratic forces. So what have we done? And what we have effectively done is basically import the problems from Bangladesh and import the problems from Myanmar. I am a Chakma. Chakmas live in the Chittagong tracts. Chakmas live in Indo-Bangladesh border. Chakmas live in Tripura. I know each of the actors. It is not something we do not know. And this is nothing new. I mean, it has been happening for a long time. We tend to ignore it. We do not take measures because we have a short-sighted approach, and sometimes we do not keep the long-term perspective that, sometimes building the relationship with the junta rather than keeping aloof actually leads to creation of our own problems in Northeast India.
Okay. Professor Biswas, we have discussed several times about, how this ethnic conflict is being played out in the state of Manipur, the demands of both sides, separate state and all. But with the arrest of the NIA, I mean, the conflict has gone global. I mean, I would say global, but the conflict has a very clear established foreign hand. Do you see this conflict ending anytime soon?
I would say that the conflict is really now getting into a more denser kind of a state. It is getting into a state when a lot of hypotheses can be made about foreign hands, because all of a sudden, from somewhere, the foreign hand thesis was blowing in the wind, and now it has really come into picture because there may be certain evidences of arms smuggling or new kinds of connections that are built up. But it is primarily an internal security matter, which cannot be diverted onto external security matter. That part one has to understand. Whenever we do security analysis, we have to understand internal factors are not necessarily causally influenced by external factors. So there is some correlation, but there is no causal link between what is happening in Myanmar, what is happening in Bandarban, and what is happening in Kuki Chin areas of Manipur and Mizoram, and also in the valley areas of Imphal. We can see vigilante groups are really arming themselves up all the time. They are using a language whereby they are seeking blood of the other side. We have heard all these speeches. So it's all going on, the inflammatory situation, I would say, internally. Now, externally, any external force can, those who are inimical to the interests of India, those who are not liking any harmony and ethnic understanding between communities, would really like to take advantage of that. That goes without saying. But that doesn't make it a cause to say that it is all external hand. Because the moment you say this, you are pushing under the carpet the ethnocentricity, the kind of hate narrative, the sense of othering, the kind of dominance of one over the other, the hill-valley divide, the relative deprivation of the hill areas, everything is pushed under the carpet. And this is nothing but an old geostrategic narrative of the 90s. The new geostrategic narrative, if we have to link the internal and the external, it's all about internal connection between ethnicities and how it extends beyond. Now, that extension beyond is not determined by only military and security forces. It is determined by the democratic situation. But in case of Myanmar, you know, the Myanmar's military are continuously in a mode of aggression. They're attacking their own minorities. So therefore, it has a kind of an offshoot and a kind of a backwash effect on Manipur and the adjacent states as well. So the situation concerning Myanmar is very different. It's not really an internal and external matter at all. This binary between internal and external has to be given up, and it is not proper to hypothesize only about an external hand. Rohitji, yeah.
Well, Professor Prasenjit, basically we were talking about this new external angle which has come. Nobody is brushing aside the complexity which is there. We have discussed it for the last 5 months and counting. So nobody is taking it away. Like it is, we are discussing this thing post the arrest of Mr. Gangte and the kind of new revelations which has emerged. Post that we are talking about this. For the first 4 months, we only spoke about the inherent internal differences, the clash between the ethnicity. So I would just say that, that nobody brushes, at least not, we are not trying to brush it under. Rami, you heard Professor Biswas, and also I would like to draw your attention to one thing. Do you see that, this particular new detail, which is not new per se, it was already in the air. It is going to exacerbate the entire situation of Manipur in the sense of any kind of peace, fragile or otherwise, in the state. Do you think it is going to prolong the conflict given by this funding by Bangladesh and Myanmar-based militant outfits to, militant outfits based out of Manipur?
Brijesh, was that question to me?
Yeah, that question was to you.
Brijesh, first of all, let me address a few things. Nobody is saying that, as you correctly said, that any of these divides, these historical divides, these colonially established divides, nobody is brushing them under the table. The lack of development, the sense of otherness is something that has been established long ago. But yes, you cannot brush under the table the role and the historical veracity of the fact that that there has been international hands in these areas many times before. The longest running insurgency, the NSCN, was funded, was given tactical support by external agencies. Therefore, this is not a surprise. Number two, as much as I more often than not agree with Dr. Chakma, I have a slightly different view. I think India keeping diplomatic channels open with Myanmar is good for our strategic relationship, because we must understand that Myanmar owes 40% of its debt to China. Alienating it, especially when we have multi-billion-dollar projects in Myanmar, whether it's the Trilateral Highway, whether it's the Kaladan multimodal project, would only really, it would put into jeopardy a lot of our investments in that area. It is only recently that we saw the Adani-run project have to close, have to shut down for a loss of over 30 billion. So all of this has a direct impact on India's economy, has a direct impact on India's national security. Therefore, if we remember that even in the first couple of weeks of the conflict breaking out, Myanmar gave out a very strong statement. It gave out an official statement saying that it urges its citizens who are living across the border not to indulge in any illegal activity or cause any ethnic unrest. These are diplomatic wins, and I think it goes very far to build a narrative, a strong case on India's behalf. We also, as I mentioned in my opening statement, are seeing huge amount of Western involvement and interference in countries like this. And this sort of Western involvement and interference, as we've seen in colonial times in the Northeast, has never kept India's sensibilities, as a focus in its priorities. So I think, we have to understand the game that is being played. It is a greater game than we think it is. We are talking about a world that is highly dependent on critical materials. We are talking about a world which has heavy rare earth elements as a part of its future policies, and Myanmar is one of those places where, every sort of security, every sort of economic incentive is being ignored for the kind of benefits that are to be had from Myanmar. Therefore, it is called the sacrifice zone. Dysprosium, terbium, these are the elements that are used for basic things like the light that your mobile phone produces. And Myanmar is only one of the 4 countries in the world that has it. And that is the kind of, interest that Western powers have. And, they unfortunately have done it in the northwestern frontier with Afghanistan, and they're doing it in the northeastern frontier. So we have to look at this as a whole. Now, when we come to whether this is going to impact or, exacerbate the conflict at this point, I think, these are just little pieces falling into place. And these pieces are going to continue falling into place as our investigative agencies keep making the arrests and keep, putting this jigsaw puzzle together. And we will then only understand the larger impact as well as the larger game in this. Like I said, the ethnic differences is not lost on anybody. But to ignore the international, the international impact on these ethnic differences is being foolhardy. Now, under international pressure, Myanmar has decided to take back, or at least has said that it will take back some of the Rohingya refugees from Bangladesh. If we ignore these facts, we're in for big trouble, because the minute they do take these refugees back, there is going to be conflict within the local Buddhist groups as well as the Rohingyas in these regions, which was the reason first that they were pushed out of Myanmar. So I think these are little things that we cannot ignore. They have huge impacts on us. No, this is not going to solve the problem on ground, but it is going to help us unravel what really has happened and therefore make strategies to counter it.
Okay. Mr. Chakma, you wanted to respond to this?
No, I think we agree on one particular thing, myself and Rami, that there are international actors who are involved in. I think where we may disagree is the approach of the government of India on a particular situation. Now, I just want to go little back. The area which is of interest, or which has been very much of interest to India, has been the Arakan province of Myanmar, where Caladan port comes to. In 1990s, and I have been involved in this, in the sense that I have been monitoring from 1990s. The government of India initially supported the Arakan Communist Party and etc. In 1998, we were hunduik by a double agent of the Myanmar army, major who was of Indian origin. Then India conducted what's called the Operation Leech. And the entire leadership of the Arakanis, the ethnic Arakanis, we are massacred in Andaman Nicobar Island. And at that point of time, Defense Minister was George Fernandez. I still remember meeting George on that particular issue with a couple of Arakanis refugees. So with that, what had happened is that Arakanis started distrusting India, and they have been disturbing the Caladan port, kidnapping officials and etc. And the Myanmarese general had on record said that the Arakan army is being funded by China. And they had Stinger missiles, they had the anti-aircraft missiles, and etc., which are being brought through the Chittagong tracks. So what we have done in that particular process is that we have lost support of the ethnic communities in Arakan, and I think the external intelligence agencies are aware of that particular situation. So in Arakan, we do not have any support of the local communities. So that's why when I talk about the strategy is basically what has been the policy of the government of India. We cannot ignore the fact that for our own national security interests, of course, our external and internal intelligence agencies will be involved, and they have been crossing, and these groups, they cross freely between Bangladesh and India and Myanmar. That's one point. The second point which I want to mention is that with respect to the Rohingya refugees, and Rami can check this, I follow very closely. The Rohingya refugee population, when they came from the 70s, then in 92, okay, each time Rohingya refugees go back, they come back via Chittagong tracks. So genuine repatriation never takes place. Every decade, Myanmar expels about 10 lakhs people. So the people who have come in 2017 onwards, if you look at the UNHCR's database, which is published, you will see that the Rohingya refugee population, which has one of the highest fertility rate in the world, the number of population in the camps are going down instead of increasing almost 33% by every year. So where are these people are going? So when it comes to repatriation of the Rohingya refugees, Myanmar shall not take back any Rohingya refugee. They may engage. And who is the driver of that negotiation? It's the ambassador of China, and they have kicked out. And the last point which I wanted to mention is that, of course, Western countries will be involved in it, but we have to understand the involvement of the Western countries in Northeast India, because they cannot parachute themselves in the Northeast. They either have to come through Bangladesh or they have to come through Myanmar. On Myanmar, I think the relationship between the West and the Myanmar government is very bad. In Bangladesh, at least Hasina government is seen to be the government of India. And that's why they had taken action against the insurgent groups after the government of India facilitated the agreement between the Shanti Bahinis and the government of Bangladesh in 1997. So therefore, I mean, what I disagree with Rami is that if the Western countries were to come, they will need an interlocutor. This is not to say that there is no involvement of the international actors. What I will say is that all the insurgent groups freely move around. They just come, take the documents, and I am not disclosing that. Yeah, meaning discounting that fact.
Okay, Mr. Chakma. You know, for our viewers, we would like to play the visual of the person who has been arrested by National Investigative Agency. He is the person, you know, who is being taken to the court for NIA to seek his remand. And, you know, after that, we'll play the soundbite of Keshav Meghchandran, who is the Congress president and also the chief minister, of what he has to say on the arrest which has been executed, and also the 4 people who have been arrested in connection of 2 students who have been killed. Rami, I'll come to you post the soundbites.
And again, the incidents has happened, the violence is still continuing, and it has been already completed, the 5 months. So there is not a single sign of improvement. So Prime Minister is still silent, and Home Minister is not taking care well, and still the Chief Ministers, no, until and unless Chief Ministers continue to the, at the to his post, no, this violence will not stop. So it is because of the failure of his administration, totally accountable to his administrations. So it is quite hopeless. People are very unrest. For this Congress party, now and then we appeal to the government, both the central government and the state government. Earlier, before this Prime Minister, Honorable Prime Ministers went to America, we had been waiting, we had been camping here for 15 days, but we couldn't get the appointment of the Honorable Prime Ministers.
ये जो मणिपुर में हो रहा है ये घटना ये वेजिंग वॉर अगेंस्ट द इंडियन यूनियन बाय द Kuki militant from Myanmar base and Bangladesh base along with some militant from India. तो it clearly shows इसने सबको दिखा दिया है कि ये कोई मामूली चीज नहीं है। तो इसलिए हम एनआईए को और भारत सरकार को बहुत बहुत हम धन्यवाद करता हूँ, खास करके मणिपुर के पब्लिक लोग और भारत का पब्लिक लोग ने जो ये सच्चाई को लाने के लिए 3-4 महीना लगा के कई तरह तरह का मीडिया कवरेज दे के रिपोर्ट दे के सबको ये समझने का लाइन में आया है। इसीलिए हम सबको बधाई करता हूँ, सबको थैंक्स, और खास करके ऑनरेबल प्राइम मिनिस्टर मोदी जी और ऑनरेबल यूनियन अमित शाह जी खास करके ये स्टेटस में लाने के लिए हम बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया। एनआईए की तरफ से एक केस के लिए जो कोकटा में बॉम्ब ब्लास्ट हुआ था उसी में इसे एक पकड़ लिया, उसको हम दिल्ली ले गया और आज एक ब्रेक थ्रू हुआ है जो जहाँ में जो एक दो स्टूडेंट एक लड़की और एक लड़का को जो हाइनेस क्राइम उसको मर्डर किया था पकड़ने के बाद में उसको हम लोग ने अभी तक नहीं पकड़ सका था, लेकिन कल परसों से ऑनरेबल यूनियन होम मिनिस्टर अमित शाह जी ने वो एक सीबीआई का स्पेशल डायरेक्टर को अलोंग विद 5 सीनियर ऑफिसर यहाँ भेज के कैम करके रखा है और कैम करने के बाद में विद द सपोर्ट ऑफ द इंडियन आर्मी और पैरामिलिट्री फोर्सेस, असम राइफल्स और स्टेट पुलिस कंबाइंड टीम करके आज 4 एक्यूज पकड़ लिया है और ये बहुत बड़ा अचीवमेंट है। तो ये हैंगलेब एरिया सुल्तानपुर से पकड़ लिया है। इसीलिए हम एनआईए, सीबीआई और सारे सेंट्रल पैरामिलिट्री फोर्सेस इंक्लूडिंग इंडियन आर्मी एंड असम राइफल।
This was Manipur Chief Minister N. Biren Singh. Yeah, Rami, you were saying something and then I'll go to General Siwach for his reaction.
Brijesh, I have a limited point. First of all, with Myanmar, the Tatmadaw at this point, we have to realize when the Democratic Party was also in Myanmar, there wasn't much grip that they had on the insurgent groups in the country. The Tatmadaw reserves about 25% of the seats. It's very difficult to dislodge them. They also own some of the biggest banks, the biggest companies. That was my limited point. But in addition to that, when we're talking about vested interests by Western powers, I'm not talking about their active presence on ground. I'm talking about the policies that destabilize regions like this. For example, the Congress has just passed the HR 5497, the Burma Unified Through Rigorous Military Accountability Act of 2021, which technically talks about the humanitarian aid that will be provided to groups in Myanmar, but also, and many people have casted doubt on the wording of it, also talks about assistance in other support to Burma, in addition to taking onus upon themselves to promote democracy and human rights. And I don't think I need to remind anybody else, what really happened in all the other places where they try to promote democracy and human rights. So that is the fear or the point of doubt that I come from of the role of Western powers in these countries. Over and above that, Brijesh, let me also say this, that the Rohingyas have often used even states like Tripura as channels. The railway police has caught, dozens of them trying to cross Tripura, coming in from Bangladesh and making their way to states like Kerala and UP. This is in the public domain. So I think the destabilization of this region from all these multiple factors is very evident to any observer of this country, of these regions. Number 3, I think we also must really keep in mind when we talk about this that a lot of policies that we have seen in these countries are not fair policies. On one hand, and this is where we must question Western powers. On one hand, Western powers talk about reinstating democracy, reinstating human rights, bringing the Rohingyas back, supporting insurgent groups. But on the other hand, their policies towards these countries change the minute very suitable options of mining or gas and oil pipelines, come into the picture. It was found by a an investigation done by the Associated Press News, which found that the European Union's 2021 regulation on conflict minerals, had the omission of rare earths, which, like I said, only there are 4 countries where you can mine it, and that is Myanmar.
Absolutely.
So, this sort of double standards and hypocrisy has put us in trouble before. It's blocked the Northwestern frontier for us. And I fear that the same sort of bad policies, bad initiatives, vested interests, and double standards will block the Northeastern frontier
Rami,
for us.
I have been a firm believer that, when it comes to certain things, Western powers, Western countries are a firm believer in the adage as do as I say, not as I do. So, and then herein lies the the difference. And Mr. Chakma, I'll come to you. I'll have to go to
just
General.
half a minute. Just half a minute.
Keep it half a minute because then General Sivach is waiting.
Yeah, sorry, General Sival. I just wanted to say is that every state.
Boss, I'll have a separate discussion before you and Rami, so you can thrash it out.
What I'm saying,
all the points of disagreement. Trust me, I can do that.
No. Every state has only one thing, that is its own interest. And the Chinese always believe that we are supporting Dalai Lama, allowing a government to exist on our own soil, and they have not been reacting to that. For us, Dalai Lama, I'm a Buddhist, he's a god. But look at the other way, the way Chinese perceive it. So what I'm trying to say is that, there is no government which, doesn't take care of its own interest. That's what I think I was trying to say.
Okay. General Sivach. And, trust me, you can't blame me for keeping you waiting. The blame lies at Mr. Chakma and not at me.
No, Rami.
Very clear, sir. Please go ahead.
Yeah, but just see what is happening in Myanmar has to be seen on the overall perspective. Now, you remember that China is making China-Myanmar economic corridor, which is coming from Yunnan to going to Kuakapil. Now, this also was having a lot of problems. But very cleverly, they have bought a peace with Arakan, Kachin, as well as Rohingya militants. Because they want, this is a very important project, as it is an eastern wing of the same 2 corridors which China is making. One, the western one is the going in Pakistan, China-Pakistan economic corridor, and this China-Myanmar economic corridor. Now, as far as India is concerned, we are also having same problem. The point is this Kaladan multi-modal project, which is coming from Kolkata and then coming towards basically the port in Myanmar. From there, it is again coming by the ship and then coming by the road through the Aizawl. Now, this project, which we thought will be completed in a record time, is not being completed because there are problems of certain militant groups which are operating, and they are not letting the contractor work. Now, therefore, you have no other choice but to buy peace from this militant group. Otherwise, it will never let it happen. Same way that international trilateral highway, which is going from India to Myanmar to then going to Thailand, and we think that we will extend it to Cambodia and Laos, is also not being completed because due to this rivalry between number of ethnic militant groups. Now, the question comes is, how do we handle these things? We have a national policy now. We are now much more, one can say, realistic, that irrespective what type of government is in Myanmar, we have no choice but to open our front. Earlier, we were very reluctant to open our front with military junta. But then in later part of 90, we realized it. We stand to lose. Chinese will come in a big way. Our interest not see. As of today, we have opened our front with them. We have a workable relation. We have also given weapon system to Myanmar. But certainly the problem in Myanmar is the western portion of Myanmar is also not totally under the control of military junta. Now, all these things which are there have got ramification in the northeast. Now, when we are talking about the people who are there in Myanmar, let's say there are Kuki, they are coming, the Chin population. Now, point came about Rohingyas. Now, Rohingya, you must understand, these Rohingyas have all gone to Bangladesh. They are there in Cox's Bazar. None of them want to come to the northeast. The reason is they are Muslims, and majority of the northeast states are the Christian dominated. Now their basically aim is to try to come to other parts of India, and that's why they are trying to infiltrate in India via Tripura and also through basically Assam. So this is a point which we must understand. As far as Rohingyas are concerned, their main aim is somehow ever come inside India and then go pan-India. And that is they spread out. They are not likely to stay in Northeast. What is happening in Northeast is the Chen population coming. Also, they are coming toward Myanmar, from Myanmar coming to Manipur. Also in Mizoram. In Mizoram, you should understand the Mizo National Front is very, very positive as far as this population is concerned. So all said and done, what we need is that you will find this new development which is coming. These are the fault lines which India had. The new contours have come in now. The China is in a big way involved. Weapons are coming from Myanmar and also from Bangladesh. We have to be much more careful. The problem may lie in India, but its roots are not only in India, they possibly are in Bangladesh as well as Myanmar. So holistic view has to be taken. I suppose that is the beginning to understand that the Manipur problem is not only restricted to the geographical area of Manipur. It has got some roots in Myanmar as well as in Bangladesh.
Okay, General Sawant, there's one more important development where, the 4 individuals have been arrested by a special team of CBI in the killing of 2 Meitei youths, and, 2 women have also been arrested. Paumelim Haukep, Malswan Haukep, and apart from that, 2 women and 2 minor dependents have been detained by the combined team of special team of CBI, which has come from Delhi. The Kuki community is calling the arrest arbitrary. Professor Biswas, do you see the arrest as end of an incident which again flared up the situation in Manipur, or do you see as just a temporary lull before the arbitrary angle of this arrest, as being said by Kuki community, will blow into another round of conflict?
Whether the arrest is arbitrary or not, let law takes its own course. On that, nothing much can be said at this point because investigation is on. So whenever there is a situation of justice should be meted out, no doubt about it. And there are many such cases of loot, arson, rape, everything. I wish investigative agencies also take them into cognizance and really does it very objectively. That may bring the situation to a certain kind of a semblance of peace and harmony. That is absolutely needed from the internal security point of view. Second important issue here is that, there are these vigilante groups. They are still baying for blood. And there are these illegitimate weapons, which is available everywhere in Manipur. There is also a certain kind of an illegitimate transaction centering narcotics and other such contraband element. That is also going on. So all these going on have to be taken into account in totality. Otherwise, taking one aspect will be like 7 blind men, so trying to see what an elephant is all about. So we have to have a holistic point of view about security, which should not go missing. The second important aspect, once again, discussing Myanmar and Bangladesh in the context of Manipur, is a certain kind of extrapolation. There may be links. Links are always there. But links do not allow you to say that, establish an entire narrative of causality. Because Myanmar is ruled by a military junta, so this must happen in India's northeast. That kind of correlation is absolutely not there. Until and unless we take into account again holistically. How many insurgent groups are there in Myanmar? It's not just of the Kuki community. It's of Meitei community, Naga community, various other smaller communities have their insurgency base in Myanmar and in certain parts of Bangladesh even. So now, if we have to take this geopolitics holistically, we cannot reduce it to the question of the refugees or internally displaced people of another country infiltrating into India because of their own security and their homelessness to get some shelter here. So things have to be looked at more holistically instead of looking at it in a one-sided biased manner. Because
Well,
that
nobody is
leads
looking
us
at it
more-
on one side way, Professor. Yeah, Rami, you wanted to respond to.
Brijesh, I am really happy that you brought up the rest of these individuals. I don't think that should be, that should be a problem for anybody. I think we cannot cast doubt on our investigative agencies because I think they're responsible enough to know that at such a sensitive time, without evidence, it would be foolhardy to be making arrests that also of women and minor children. On the contrary, I think the question that everybody should be asking was, why were their children involved in the first place? What sort of recruitment is going on? What sort of weaponizing of children is going on? And I think NCPCR should take great cognizance not only of these groups, not only of the communities that have emboldened this sort of involvement of children, but also the people that are supporting or defending the involvement of children in such heinous crimes. Number two, IDLF, which portrays itself as the mouthpiece of tribals in the state, which it is not, has also called for a protest against these arrests. I mean, it really makes me wonder whether they care about the narrative that they are building or the perception that is going to go out in the rest of the country to observers like me and the layman on which side of this conflict they are on. Because honestly, at this point, they should be showing a sense of solidarity. If 2 children have been killed, they should be saying that, yes, let the investigative agencies do their job. If they are innocent, they will come back to us. And if they are not, maximum punishment must be seen. But to ask for Churchandpur to close down indefinitely not only impacts them, their own businesses, but also shows to me and many others that their heart and their minds are not in the right place. Because you cannot defend the indefensible. Nobody will stand by you.
Absolutely.
Number two, Brijesh, nobody is extrapolating the fact that there are international agencies, international communities involved. Like I said, the government of Myanmar themselves gave out a notice in the first couple of weeks stating that, asking their own citizens not to be involved. Number two, history tells us that this has been the case even post-independence in India, that there has been support that comes from across the borders. So there is no extrapolation here. These are facts. And the minute we deny these facts, we deny the entire picture from coming together. The jigsaw puzzle is never going to be complete until and unless we, without a doubt, realize that history proves this. Present investigation proves this. NIA, which is one of our most superior agencies, has made arrests based on evidence.
Okay. So a week after arresting a train operative of separatist group PLA, the NIA has arrested another terror suspect, 51-year-old Seminalam Gangte, who is a private school teacher from Churachandpur, in connection with a case of transnational conspiracy by Myanmar, Bangladesh-based militant groups. The NIA has also found his alleged involvement in a suspected IED blast case in Manipur's Bishnupur district, in which 3 people were injured.
BrahMos, stealthy, lethal, precise. It flies at 3 times the speed of sound and cuts through a warship like a hot knife through butter. China's navy has threatened its neighbors, and they are turning to the BrahMos for protection. The Warship Killer. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.
इंजीनियरिंग कर रहे हैं, जो कि सभी लोग कर रहे हैं.
Coaching is now starting from grade 3, 4, 5, 6.
कोटा जाने वाली बीच राह में आधे टेस्ट देके हैं सिलेक्शन की चाह में।
ऑल इंडिया का बच्चा कोटा जाता है।
This rat race is for rats, not for humans. So why should we even be a part of it?
The Rat Race. This and more streaming on world's first news OTT, News9 Plus. Download now.